postponed due to technical issues. She remains under house arrest, powerless to help as her country is enveloped in chaos.
We have to fight for our future. I don't accept a military coup.
Some police have questioned their role in all this and fled to India.
I cannot shoot the people and beat the people who do not commit a crime. They are only peaceful protesters.
A view not shared by the wider force. With videos like this one from Mandalay showing relentless fire from soldiers who show no sign of backing down. Mazoe Ford, ABC News.
Police in the US are boosting their presence in Asian American communities after a series of shootings in Atlanta, Georgia. It's believed the same man targeted 3 massage parlours, killing 8 women before being arrested. The 21-year-old has been charged with murder but denies the shootings were race-related. Here's Jordan Butler.
I think we got every officer in the county down here on duty at the moment.
This suburb north of Atlanta has been rocked by a deadly mass shooting.
We had a shooting here, happened right here at the Young's Asian Massage.
But what they didn't know was the gunman was on the move, and less than an hour later, police were called to another spa closer to the city.
As we responded to the call, we were able to come upon the scene where an individual was shot inside the location. While at that location, we received another call across the street at shots fired. 3
spas were targeted in this fatal attack. The majority of the victims were Asian women. South Korea's foreign ministry has confirmed among those killed were 4 people of Korean descent. Police believe this man, 21-year-old Robert Aaron Long, is the shooter.
We've had no other reports of shootings, and so I'm confident that the community in general is safe.
He was arrested in a neighbouring county after a manhunt for several hours turned into a highway patrol chase.
Georgia State Patrol troopers performed the pit maneuver, which caused the vehicle to spin out of control. The subject was taken into custody without incident at mile marker 93 in Crisp County and transported to the Crisp County Jail.
Authorities say it's too early to know if the victims were killed because of their race, but hate crimes against Asian Americans have spiked in recent months, fueled by blaming of Asian people for the spread of COVID-19. Just days ago, the president condemned the racial attacks.
They're forced to live in fear for their lives just walking down streets in America. It's wrong, it's un-American, and it must stop.
While an investigation into why this happened continues, yet another mass shooting has left the country reeling. Jordan Butler, ABC News.
Well, anger is growing in London over the failure of authorities to protect women from violence. Demonstrators have returned to the streets to protest how police responded to a weekend vigil for a murdered 33-year-old woman. They are now furious about a controversial new bill that aims to restrict the right to protest. Our Europe correspondent Linton Besser with the story.
So many women whose violent deaths have escaped detention. In the UK, 117 in the past year alone.
Yes, this is something that happens even here in London. And in the UK, it's actually a woman every 3 days that dies because of male violence.
This impromptu memorial was put up just a few blocks from where 33-year-old Sarah Everard was abducted and killed, allegedly by a police officer.
It's just resonated with us and reminded us that this isn't just a single issue, it's part of a bigger system of oppression.
For the 3rd night in a row, women have come out in protest against that oppression, demanding the government do more to protect them. Much of that anger is centred on the mishandling of a peaceful vigil for Sarah Everard on Saturday night, which saw police handcuff and arrest 4 women.
I just stood there and I know a police officer was pulling my arm trying to get my name, and then all of a sudden I was tackled to the ground.
Sisters united will never be defeated!
The focus has now shifted to Parliament, where MPs started debating a bill that would give police greater power to quell protests, but which offers little new protection for women and girls. The Prime Minister has promised he's listening and will do more.
Women in particular must feel that when they make serious complaints about violence, about assault, that they are properly heard.
Campaigners are hoping that Sarah Everard's tragic death is a turning point for British society. But if it is, it will have come too late for so many women. Linton Besser, ABC News, London.
The US has turned its foreign policy focus to Asia during the Biden administration's first overseas high-level talks. The country's top diplomat met with his South Korean counterpart and committed to the denuclearization of the Korean peninsula and took a hard stance on China. The meeting comes as North Korea warned it wasn't willing to talk until America offered concessions. Carrington Clark is in Seoul.
Outside, not everyone was happy that the Americans were in town. But inside, it was a picture of partnership as the US and South Korea pledged a united front on dealing with the North.
We also remain committed to the denuclearization of the Korean peninsula. And there is no daylight between us on this point.
The North Koreans have refused to directly talk to the Americans, instead sending a message through its state media, warning force will be met with force and goodwill with goodwill. South Korea is still technically at war with its nuclear-armed northern neighbour, which also possesses enough conventional firepower to level Seoul. Subway stations like this one are also built to serve as shelters if conflict were to erupt. But South Koreans go about their daily lives seemingly unaffected by the threat of the North.
It can go from somewhere very benign to something very, very explosive in a matter of hours.
South Korean President Moon Jae-in only has a year to go in his term. He promised a better relationship with the North when he was elected, but has little to show for it.
The US has been pursuing maximum pressure on North Korea through sanctions. It has not been very effective.
The American delegation continued to talk tough on China, even if the South Koreans didn't join in.
China is using coercion and aggression to systematically erode autonomy in Hong Kong, undercut democracy in Taiwan, abuse human rights in Xinjiang and Tibet, and assert maritime claims in the South China Sea that violate international law.
Some people may think having conversations with other countries before meeting with China may help put pressure on China. But it's just like someone walking alone at night and singing to give themselves courage.
Next stop for America's top diplomat is a face-to-face in Alaska with his Chinese counterpart. Carrington Clark, ABC News, Seoul.
Australia is working to establish a travel bubble with Singapore that could be operational by July. The deal could also see the island nation being used as a quarantine hub, so travellers entering Australia via Singapore wouldn't have to quarantine here. Here's Yvonne Young.
It's an ambitious plan, but one that could be a solution for 40,000 Australians still trying to get home. Deputy Prime Minister Michael McCormack has confirmed that Australia is working on a plan to establish not only a travel bubble with Singapore, but a quarantine gateway for travellers on their way to Australia. Under the proposals, Australians would be allowed to travel to Singapore for work, study or leisure without approval from the Home Affairs Department and without having to quarantine. That's if they've had a COVID vaccine. Well, Singaporeans who've been vaccinated would be able to travel to Australia without 2 weeks of hotel quarantine. And for those coming from other countries, it may be possible for them to enter Australia if they've completed quarantine in Singapore. Currently, New Zealanders can enter Eastern Australia without having to quarantine, but authorities here are hoping to turn that into a two-way arrangement and possibly even a three-way bubble with Singapore.
I'm looking forward, hopefully, to travelling to Singapore in the next couple of months to be able to extend those conversations.
Singapore already allows Australians in. They just have to self-isolate until they get a negative COVID result, which can take up to 2 days. A formal travel bubble will not only help return thousands of Australians stuck overseas, but boost tourism to Australia and allow international students back in.
I think Australia stands to benefit from it more and immediately from it because we've got the issue of the airlines, and we know that Qantas and Air New Zealand are both looking at the travel health passports as a way to get international travel restarted. So we just need to get the gears of tourism restarted because it's going to be so difficult the longer it keeps going.
It's hoped the bubble will be in place by July or August before a broader reopening of international borders from October. Yvonne Yong, ABC News.
The Australian government says it's good news that European regulators have found there is no link between the AstraZeneca vaccine and increased risk of blood clots. A number of EU nations suspended the jab over fears of an association with blood disorders. Europe's Medicines Agency says the vaccine is safe and effective and its use should continue.
Just 25 cases of rare blood clotting disorders among 20 million people to have received the AstraZeneca vaccine. But they were enough for France, Germany and Italy and a dozen other European states to suspend its use. Now Europe's top drugs regulator has given it the all clear.
Its benefits in protecting people from COVID-19 with the associated risks of death and hospitalisation outweigh the possible risks.
The European Medicines Agency has urged countries to recommence the drug's use.
The vaccine is not associated with an increase in the overall risk of thromboembolic events or blood clots.
The British regulator has come to the same conclusion.
There is no difference that blood clots in veins are occurring more than would be expected in the absence of vaccination for either vaccine.
The centre where I'm getting jabbed is currently using the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine for those receiving their first dose, and that is the one I'll be having.
It's good news that the AstraZeneca vaccine's been given the green light by the European regulators. And here in Australia, we're relying on the AstraZeneca vaccine.
European investigators did caution a possible association with very rare but serious blood clotting disorders.
PROC has recommended to add a warning to the SMPC and the patient leaflet and a description of these cases.
Whether that's enough to counter scepticism in Europe is yet to be seen. Italy was among the first to announce a resumption of the vaccine on a day of memorial for the more than 100,000 Italians who've died of COVID-19 so far. Linton Besser, ABC News, London.
Meanwhile, new, more contagious strains of COVID continue to emerge around the world. Health workers in the United States are now bracing for a possible fourth wave of infections as the British strain of the virus spreads. Our North America correspondent, Catherine Diss.
Okay, hold on just a second. Let me see where the patient is. Okay.
So this is the intensive care unit. It's a mixed intensive care unit. We have 14 beds.
As coronavirus surged during winter, this hospital in the remote Appalachian Mountains of Virginia's southwest became a front row seat to the devastation.
As I pass by the rooms, every room has memories now, memories that are bad, actually.
Dr. Haitham Adada has treated the sickest of coronavirus patients in Virginia and Tennessee since the pandemic took hold.
In room 3, I remember that 21-year-old who passed from the COVID-19.
Sorry, a 21-year-old?
Passed from the coronavirus.
Of the 4,300 people infected in this county, 100 have died. 1 in 12 residents have contracted the virus.
Did you have any problems overnight?
The surge has now passed.
Hello?
But there's another threat looming, fast-spreading variants of the virus.
I don't know if I can handle a fourth wave. I did my best in the December and January and worked all what I can do. Now, if another wave is coming, I may need some help. I don't know if I can handle another one alone.
The B117 variant, first discovered in the United Kingdom and thought to be up to 50% more contagious, is spreading fast here.
We are in a race against time to vaccinate as many members of the community as we possibly can. The variant strains exist. The way they replicate fast, they are transmissible. The fact that we are not being able to test enough does not mean that they do not exist.
This is a late birthday present for J.J. Boatman on his 9th birthday. No, it's not what he wanted, but I hope he enjoys it. Okay, go, big boy.
Jason Jaden celebrated his 9th birthday as COVID-19 again surged across Texas.
Is that the one you wanted?
Oh my God.
What's that?
Oh my God.
What is that?
Don't eat that.
What is it?
Oh my.
What happened, baby?
Bah.
3 weeks later, he was dead.
It's a struggle to even want to live. Like I said, he was literally the life of the house. I mean, he was just so full of energy and so loving. I mean, just so caring. I mean, it's just hard to see somebody like that go. He really loved living life to the fullest.
Happy birthday to JJ.
JJ went to bed with a sore throat. He woke up struggling to breathe.
They let me lay next to him all night. He wasn't moving, period. I mean, he's just gone. And later on that morning, the doctor told me that his heart and lungs were getting even worse and that he's going to go on his own. And about an hour and a half after she told me that, his heart finally gave out. And that was it. And he was just gone.
A test confirmed he had COVID-19. He had autism and ADHD, but doctors say that doesn't explain why the virus claimed his life so quickly. One theory, it may have been a new, more deadly strain.
They don't understand how this COVID hit him so fast within an 8-hour time frame, took his lungs down that quick and just took him down. They don't know why it happened so fast without the symptoms.
The variant strains are spreading fast in every state, but much of the country is flying blind. Testing for the mutations has been slow, lagging other countries such as the UK.
Our sequencing of viruses in this country has been woefully inadequate. There are very likely to be other variants of which we are not aware.
Dr. Joshua Schiffer mapped America's first 3 waves of COVID-19. He says a 4th surge is now inevitable, despite 10% of the American population now fully vaccinated.
I think there will be a 4th wave in many regions across the country, but hopefully that wave will be much more manageable than the subsequent 3 waves we've dealt with in this country.
If we can keep up the rate of vaccinations and get everybody vaccinated before we have a surge, I think we should be safe. Let's pray that we don't have another surge.
An influential Maori tribe in New Zealand has lodged an unprecedented legal claim over waterways, alleging mismanagement has poisoned their rivers. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has also promised to act after her government found that outside of conservation areas, at least 95% of the country's rivers are polluted. Foreign correspondent Yarabu Malam reports.
New Zealand's pristine and dramatic landscapes are the sets of Hollywood blockbusters, and its natural beauty a major tourism drawcard. But behind its clean green image is a shocking reality. The water here is among the purest in the world, but as these flows go further downstream, they're transforming into some of the most polluted waterways in the developed world. One of the biggest polluters is the powerful dairy industry. Heavy use of synthetic nitrogen fertiliser has fuelled the boom, but also leached into the environment, polluting the waterways.
We're told that, rivers are dangerous, that you could get sick from rivers, that, they could harm your kids and your pets.
Last year, a government report found 95 to 99% of rivers running through urban, farming and non-native forested areas have unacceptable levels of pollution. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has promised to clean up and set nitrate levels in rivers to 2.4 milligrams per litre.
I want our waterways to be swimmable again. So we're putting in place standards that actually stop the degradation.
Farmers say the new levels will mean the end of the dairy industry.
Do we want agriculture? Do we want production? Or do we want to get rid of agriculture? It becomes that blunt with those numbers.
Now the wealthiest Maori tribe, Ngāi Tahu, is stepping in, launching an unprecedented legal claim over freshwater in most of the South Island.
There's been a failure of government, there's been a failure of the market, and the only one standing with credibility on this is Māori.
The Ngāi Tahu claim will not be heard until next year. Yara Bamilham, ABC News, Canterbury Plains, New Zealand.
Over the past 10 years, the conflict in Syria has forced 13.7 million people to flee their homes. Almost half remain displaced inside the country, while the rest have fled as refugees. Tracy Shelton spoke to Syrian families who now call Australia home.
When the fighting began in Syria, Amina Srio didn't want to leave. Her son was living in Australia, but she wanted to stay in Aleppo, where she ran a school teaching English.
I had a very beautiful house. I had my own car. I had the language center. Everything was fine. Everything was beautiful.
She changed her mind the day she was travelling on a bus that was bombed.
I lost consciousness for some seconds maybe, and then I opened my eyes and saw the girl beside me without a head. That was it.
This is what's left of her neighbourhood now. Her home was destroyed. The only thing left is this family photo album. She's now in Melbourne, one of around 7,000 Syrians who have been accepted as refugees and resettled in Australia. Jesse and Giselle Adam also migrated in 2017. They fled to Lebanon as children, where the family applied to come to Australia. They arrived a year and a half later with only a few possessions, and neither spoke English.
But there was a bit like depression, like, am I gonna see my country again? Like, I'm gonna reunite it with my friends or not? Yeah, it was a mix of feeling.
But now, Jessie is studying a degree in orthoptics and Giselle oral health.
So I thank Australia 100 times and million times. Yeah, and we feel like we now belonging to Australia.
Amina says life in Australia is beautiful, but her daughter Rashid and grandson remain trapped in Syria.
I only wish that things get better in Syria, or we can get Russia to come here.
A United Nations inquiry has renewed calls for a ceasefire, saying it's finally time to put Syrians first in a war that's left no family unscathed. Tracy Shelton, ABC News.
And that is the program. You can head to the ABC's World News page for all the latest international headlines and join me on the World Weeknights on the ABC News channel. I'm Bev O'Connor. Thanks for your company. Bye-bye.